No, you're not
criminal
familiar.
Justice system, which we know.
Your colleague, Minister JIVANI, described this document as, quote, history-making for the Black community and, quote, important milestone for the Black community. It seems like something the anti-racism strategy leader may be familiar with, but it sounds like you're not. So just to recap
Point of
a couple
order,
of the...
Madam Chair? Yes. It's not appropriate for a committee member. They may ask.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Isn't that true? Canadian Looney right here. My name's Aaron. Like, subscribe, share, get notified for all the great live videos that we do here. JAMIL JIVANI, MP from Ontario, is in committee taking on 3 nasty pieces of work. We've got the chair, HEDY Fry. She's older than dirt. We've got KAMAL, KHERA, that is the Minister of Diversity, Inclusion, and People with Disabilities. She's on the other end of the spectrum. She's too young. She's a 35-year-old arrogant snob. And worse than her, maybe not worse, just as bad, we've got Jennifer O'Connell, the smelly cat. She's trash and causing problems in this committee meeting. Let's take a look, let's take a listen. JAMIL JIVANI is one to watch. These ladies have no class, none.
Now we will begin the question and answer period. The first session is going to be a 6-minute round, and we're going to begin with the Conservatives. JAMIL JIVANI. Mr. JIVANI, 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Minister said that, just in her opening remarks, that we cannot allow hate to go unchecked. So I'd like to ask the Minister, do you join me in unequivocally condemning the Sammy Doon protest on October 7th in Vancouver, where there were chants of death to Canada, death to America, death to Israel, and even burning of the Canadian flag? Do you unequivocally condemn that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I absolutely condemn such acts of anti-Semitism and acts of hate that we have seen across this country. They need to stop. Full stop. That needs to stop. Madam Speaker, we condemn them in the strongest terms possible. We're working really closely with our colleagues at Public Safety. The local jurisdictions are very much engaged on this issue. And as I mentioned, we have been very proactive at the work that we have been doing. As I mentioned, Madam Chair, through you, we have put forward Canada's first ever action plan on combating hate. This came out of the work that we have been doing with community members, working along stakeholders. This came out of the 2 summits that our government held, whether it was combating anti-Semitism or combating Islamophobia. This came out of the work that my colleague, Minister Ian, has been doing for the action plan for the 2 LGBTQ community. You know, the $275 million that we're putting forward, it's to support communities on the ground, to prevent hate. We're enhancing the Canada Security Program that actually helps communities on the ground to provide support.
Can I ask the Minister, we have seen a sharp rise in hate crimes, various types, over the last 9 years. Some statistics measured at a 251% increase. Why isn't your anti-racism strategy reducing hate crimes as opposed to being inexistent while hate crimes are getting worse?
Madam Chair, I think it's important to recognize that as a government, we have been very deliberate about making a choice to be inclusive. We have been very deliberate about supporting communities, reducing systemic barriers on the ground, by supporting communities on the ground, by making sure with the plan that we have put forward, this is a whole of government approach because we know there's no one single solution to combating hate. We need to work with partners on the ground, whether it is by making sure communities have the supports that they need, but at the same time working alongside StatsCan to make sure we're collecting disaggregated data. Also at the same time ensuring that our institutional readiness is available for our police forces. That's the work that's happening on the ground, the supports for victims and survivors. This is a whole of government approach that we have put forward to support Canadians. And I think it's important to also recognize it's been an extremely difficult time for many Canadians. And as Canadians Canadians, we have a responsibility to work alongside communities, to bring people together, to really hone in on the values that I know we're also proud as Canadians of unity, of compassion, and to make sure we're supporting communities on the ground.
Thank you, Minister. So the government's anti-racism strategy claims to make our communities, and I quote from the website, more prosperous. Since 2020, there's been a 134% increase in food bank usage in Ontario. Has your anti-racism strategy failed to make Canadians more prosperous?
Madam Chair, through you, I think it's important to recognize the fact that when we got elected back in 2015, we made a very deliberate choice to be inclusive. You know, I fundamentally believe, and I've said this many times, diversity is a fact in Canada. It exists. But inclusion is a choice. And as a government, as liberal members of this House, we have been very deliberate about making that choice to be inclusive, because we know when you remove systemic barriers for Canadians, we all win. We know when you support communities on the ground and empower them. You know, the example that I gave of a young man in Halifax that I met, Joshua, you know, because of the work that's happening on the ground that is enabling and removing barriers, getting people, you know, to get access to the supports that we are providing them, it's the reason why we're seeing amazing results
Minister,
in terms of economic empowerment of Canadians, and we're going to continue to do this work.
Could I ask a
alongside
clarifying question? So is your strategy to make the food bank lines more diverse and inclusive, or how exactly is the country more prosperous?
I reject the premise of that question, Madam Chair. As I mentioned in my remarks earlier, Canada's anti-racism strategy is to ensure that every single person, regardless of how they look, regardless of how they pray, regardless of who they love, that they have equal opportunities to contribute to the Canadian society and to be able to do it in a successful way so that they can continue to grow. That is a responsible way that we include people. I will always say, when we include people, whether it is in our government, the diversity that exists, whether it is in businesses, whether it is in our institutions, we all win, because that's the beauty of Canada, and those are the values that I know that we all agree makes us who we are as
I'm
Canadians.
not sure the Canadians lining up in food banks would think they're winning as part of the government strategy, but to move on, do you believe that part of your responsibility would be to remove some of the economic challenges facing Canadians of all races and backgrounds, perhaps even advocating for an end to the carbon tax, which is driving up the cost of living?
Madam Chair, I want to give one example. Because of the work that we have been doing, I'll give you an example of the Black Entrepreneurship Program. Because of that is yielding has supported more than 16,000 businesses, Black entrepreneurs across this country to be able to get into markets that they have never been able to get into before, because of the work that we're putting in to support communities on the ground.
Thank you. And now I go to the time is up. We're going to go to the second round, and this is a 5-minute round. And so we begin with Mr. JIVANI for 5 minutes, please, for the Conservatives.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Minister's colleague, MP Anthony Housefather, is actually on Twitter right now agreeing with the Conservative position that Sammy Doon should be listed as a terrorist entity. I wonder if the Minister responsible for anti-racism would agree with her colleague, Mr. Housefather, and the Conservative Party on that position.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure if my colleague was in the House during question period, and this was a question that was posed to the Minister of Public Safety, and I think he was very clear in his answer. Any indication or...
Good enough for Mr. Housefather, so I thought maybe the party's position had changed since then. Madam Chair, through you, I think we can all agree any listing of a terrorist organization is not done by politicians, it's done by the advice of our national and security intelligence. We take public safety extremely seriously. This is a work that our intelligence does on a daily basis, with our Five Eye partners, and the Minister, as he mentioned in the House of Commons today. I think the Minister may want to meet with Mr. Housefather to discuss this, but okay, answer received. No,
Madam Chair, I think it's important to get the answer on the record.
Time
I think it's important to get my answer on the record. Thank you. And as the Minister of Public Safety indicated, that he has urgently asked for an expedited advice from the National Security Intelligence, and he'll have an answer in the next coming days.
I don't think that's fast enough for Mr. Housefather. I hope you guys can have a conversation.
His father is not a member of this
It's on
committee at
Twitter.
this
You can
moment,
look at
so
it. Okay.
Let's move on.
We'll keep moving. Does the minister support the government's black justice strategy as part of the anti-racism strategy?
Absolutely.
Are you familiar with some of the radical criminal justice policies that your government's black justice strategy is considering at the moment?
Madam Speaker, I think it's important to recognize that the work that we're leading, working alongside Black communities right across this country, is fundamentally something that we have heard from communities members on the ground of addressing systemic racism within our criminal justice system, which is important that we address. This is the work that my colleague, Minister Virani, is leading. There's nothing that has been, there's no decisions have been made yet around the strategy, but I know we're going to be working alongside community members to make sure that communities...
Is the minister familiar with a document called the Roadmap for Transformative Change that was released this summer?
Madam Speaker, this is a work that my colleague, Minister Virani, is leading. We have very meaningful conversations on how to address systemic racism within our criminal justice system, which we know...
Your colleague, Minister Virani, described this document as, quote, history-making for the Black community and, quote, important milestone for the Black community. It seems like something the anti-racism strategy leader may be familiar with, but it sounds like you're not. So just to recap
Point of
a couple
order,
of the...
Madam Chair? Yes. It's not appropriate for a committee member. They may ask their questions, but suggesting things that have not been said into the record is inappropriate. And I would ask that Mr. JIVANI just stick to his thoughts and not try to speak on behalf of the minister. She's more than capable of doing that on her own. Unless he would like to just continue with his questions, then committee can get back to it.
That's not a point of order, Madam Chair. You know, as a Black Canadian, I've been assured that the anti-racism strategy is a whole of government approach. And if my community is told by the Minister of Justice that something is, and I quote, history-making and important milestone for Black people, that the leader of the anti-racism strategy would be familiar with it. I think that's a fair question. Nonetheless, some of the policies that are included in this include mass decarceration, reducing the number of incarcerated people by 30% over the next 10 years, decriminalizing a supply of 30 days worth of hard drugs, including cocaine, heroin, and meth, and also defunding police departments by removing 25% of federal grants from eligibility to police organizations. So the question I have is, do you support these radical criminal justice policies that your government has published as part of the Black Justice Strategy?
Maddam Speaker, I think it would only be a conservative making a joke out of, making a joke out of systemic racism that we have seen an over-incarceration of Black and Indigenous people in our criminal justice system. To be making a joke about that is disgraceful. But I expect better. I would think I would expect better
allow the
from
minister
people.
to answer the question, please.
Nobody's laughing, Madam Chair. They're flooding our communities with drugs. This is a problem.
That's not true.
Go to the second question.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
Well, gang, we've got to wrap it up right there. That's enough of that. My goodness, KAMAL, KHERA is a problem. We all knew Jennifer O'Connell is the twit in the House. JAMIL, he's a stud, fun to watch. HEDY Fry, what are we going to do about that? How long are you supposed to be allowed to run as a member of Parliament and keep your seat? It's ridiculous to watch. I watch a lot of Canadian politics, guys. They're not fooling me anymore. I think I come off as a conservative here. I'll be voting that way in the next election, but I've never voted conservative federally in my life. And there's been a number of elections. Like, subscribe, share, get notified. Leave in the comments what you think I should think about the hoax these Liberals seem to be playing on Canadians. What a show. Anyhow, like, subscribe, share, get notified. Aaron, Canadian Looney. We have a blast here watching the Question Periods live broadcasts daily. We watch that. We do other shows too. So, like, get notified and subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. Till next video, thank you for watching this one. These liberals gotta go. We need an election. Till the next time. Later, gang.